What's up, ADD family? How's everybody doing? It's a rough Friday. It's nasty out here. Look how dirty I am. Horrific day. So I watch other people's videos and brings me back. Brings back memories. Mostly bad. So I just got to thinking back to jail stints and all the times I've done locked up. And I've been locked up a lot of my life. I've spent 5 years incarcerated, whether it be in jail, boot camp, mental institutions. I've seen a lot of horror and bloodshed and known a lot of people to die that have died by their own free will, on accident. I've seen and know a lot of people that are dead now. So as I discussed,
turn right onto Old Stylesboro Road Northwest.
Sorry, I'm on my way to pick up my check from work. So as I discussed, my last jail stint was probably the roughest. The first time I went to jail was rough too. As I discussed, I didn't have that serious of charges, but my dumb ass said that I was suicidal and thought that I would get some leniency. Well, it backfired. Sorry, I'm almost to where I need to go. So it backfired on me, and I wound up going to the psychological dorm, psychological eval. That's the crazies. That are people that are clinically, mentally, criminally insane. All that. As I discussed, it was a small dorm, and it was half and half. Half older people and half younger. And there were the younger guys, most of us were going to boot camp, had revoked our probation. But most of the old guys all had serious charges. There was a guy there for child molestation, my bunkmate. He got beat up, got his shit robbed, taken from him. There was like the pod boss was this old man, Richard something or other, and he was going to prison for life. Okay? It wasn't to be fucked with. He was a scary dude. So it was scary times for a 20. I turned 22 in there. For a 21-year-old kid, it were scary times. But not nearly as scary as the last stint that I did. Actually, it's not the last time I went to jail. I've been to jail since then, but I got out that night, thank God. I got in a hit-and-run accident at work, and I got arrested on the clock on the job. Went to DeKalb County Jail. As I discussed, I was the only white person in there, and got out that night. Thank God my wife bonded me out. So the last time I went to jail was for spanking my kids with a belt, and they were serious charges. Cruelty to children, first degree times 2. That's first degree now. That's up there with, that's serious. Aggravated assault, cruelty to children, first degree. Anything aggravated assault is a horrendous charge. You do bodily harm to someone. As I discussed, Zach rubbed his face in the carpet trying to get away from me spanking him, and his face, looked terrible. Looked like I beat the fuck out of him, but I didn't. I just left a belt mark on his ass. That was bodily harm, okay? I was looking at 5 to 7 years, 7 to 10. There was a girl in our county that did less and got 2 years in prison, right off for a lot less than what Zach looked like, what the boys looked like. It scared the shit out of me. So, as I discussed, when I went, I had a high, that's high and aggravated, a belt. When I was in the jail, I went to the law library, and in the first paragraph, you look up aggravated assault, the first paragraph, honest to God now, not just the first page, but the first paragraph, the first few sentences mentions a belt. A belt is considered a weapon. honest to God, and you can go look it up yourself, aggravated assault, in the first paragraph says Bell. I've damn near bring tears to my eyes, you know? So it scared the shit out of me. So when I first went in, my bond was $75,000, right? No small cakewalk.
Continue on County Line Road Northwest for 3/4 of a mile.
So I was in there for, how long was I in there? For a couple of weeks. When I first got to the jail, they put me in a misdemeanor pod right off the rip, right? Get in the jail, get bond, and I have $5,000 bond. They take me in. First I go to what they call, I forgot what they call it. When you first come to the jail, you're in a like a holding tank, kind of. Like it's separate from the rest of the jail, right? You go in, it's the same in every single county jail. You go and you go in this first immediate place, and it's like a big open room, and it'll have jail cells all along one wall. Jail cells, and in the cells they have like glass so you can see in and out, and an open room, and then the other wall will have cops, a line of cops and computers, and there will be right next to that will be like where they book you in, and they do fingerprinting, psychological evaluation, all that, all in this one room, right?
Continue for 3 miles.
And so in this room's got phones, so you can go use the phone, and I think there's even a TV, or it might be a monitor or something there. Maybe it was, I don't even remember exactly. It was tweaking, geeking. I'd smoked crack all that night, and I went to jail. Prior to that, I was smoking crack when the cops knocked on the door. And so I'm in this room, and you're in that room. I was in there for 16 hours before they take me in, and I wanted to go back to lockup. I knew I wasn't getting out. You're in that room, and you're in that room for so many hours, and so you're allowed to use a phone, and then they put you in these cells. So you can still see out, see in, whatever. And you're in those cells, and you're in there with other guys. And the first night I was in there, I discussed this. I was in there with this guy, and he lied to me. He told me that he was in there for beating guys up at a bar, hollering at his girl. This was a story. Beat the hell out of these guys at a bar. I find out a year later. It was a year later. I was getting my deal, and he was getting his deal. His parents were very wealthy, so they had gotten it to where he was going to get out of jail, and he was going to go to one of these halfway homes or a transitional housing, something like that. But like I said, I didn't know the whole time. He lied, told us that, and wind up that he had beaten his wife, like senseless, stupid. Come to find out, he was bad cocaine, spoiled little rich dude, and he literally beat the living shit out of his girl. And so finally at the end, it came out what his charges were, what he was really in there for, and that we overheard, conversations, and he was talking with people, and his lawyer had gotten in this deal, and because his parents were super rich. If his parents weren't super rich, supposedly he wouldn't have got that deal, and he would have gone to prison. So it's proven fact, money does change situations for people. I've seen it a lot. I know a lot of stories of people paying their way out of large drug seizures, being busted for drugs. I discussed some of this. My boy DZ Wendell knows a lot of people like this. And so when I was in the jail, I was in the misdemeanor pod, and then they took me I was in there 2 days. And when I got in there, I ran into Tony, the old drug dealer. He didn't even know who I was. Tony's in some of these stories. There's 2 different Tonys. He was the Oriental one. He was the guy I went to get coke in Little Mexico, where I lived, some 20 years later. Same place, Little Mexico. I had gone with Tony to go get ounces of cocaine all the time, and come to find out he was getting it from this guy Ben. Ben was a Mexican mafia. Ben fronted bags of drugs to friends of mine. I had a friend, Fuji, and my friend Scott. Scott, the same Scott in these stories, was a huge drug dealer back in the days. They used to have this guy, Ben, used to front them a backpack full of drugs twice a week. He would come over, and my buddy Fiji, Greg, would get 2 pounds of regs, ounce of dank, hash oil, microdots, everything. All that, right? All the exotics. We get it back from this guy, Ben. One night, we go to Tony's. Me and this girl I was dating that I met when I got out of jail, Tanya. And Tanya worked at a dental office and had good money, and so it was all the time splurging on me. So me and Tanya were over at Tony smoking crack one time, and Ben came over there. I'd already known him and had already met him because I hung out with Fuji in those days, and he would come and drop off drugs all the time. I'm talking like $30,000 worth of drugs, 30 grand worth of drugs at a time. So these were crazy days. Anyway, so I run into this guy some 20 years later, and he don't recognize me. I'm in this misdemeanor pod with him. Back in those days, I met him through this girl, Crystal. He had these 2 prostitutes that he was with all the time. When he went to jail, those 2 prostitutes and me started hanging out, and I became their driver. This was Tony. I run into him in the misdemeanor pod. And so, yeah, that's another story. I actually was sort of a pimp for about a year. I hung out with these prostitutes and drove them around and carried guns and made sure that they would get taken care of. And sometimes I'd have to go in the hotel rooms with them and flash my gun. So Johns knew not to try shit, because all the time guys were trying to stiff her, and I'd have to get stupid. So that's a whole nother story. So I see this guy, and he don't recognize. So at that time, he gets busted, and it was a 2nd felony, and they transport him. My phone's fixing to die. I'm gonna have to pick this up on part 2. If this dies out, my phone's about to die out, but I'll get to record later. So I'm in a misdemeanor pod. I run into him. 2 days later, they find out, whatever, and they take me over to the felony dorm. Now I'm in K-Pod, the worst of the worst. There's K-Pod and there's L-Pod. L-Pod they're both felony dorms, but K-Pod is the worst of the worst. That's where I met Mike Adams. There was all the high-profile murderers in the town were in this dorm now. There was 2-3 high-profile murders in the dorm at the same time. A dentist that had killed his wife and went to Mexico, and this guy had dragged this cop out into the woods and raped this lady cop and was burning her with a crack pipe and left her for damn near dead. He was high profile. He was in there. He was jacking off while this guy was getting a visit one day, and so him and this dude started fighting in the middle of the pod over it. He's literally sneaking a look and sitting there gunning, sitting there playing off, jacking with himself while he's watching this dude's girl on visitation. So they fought over that, and that place was brutal. It was brutal from hell. I saw all kind of crazy ass fights. I've seen a lot of fights. I've been to jail, seen fights on the street and bars. Never have I ever seen fights like in those felony dorms. There was a fight in that dorm, as I discussed, and a riot, and they locked us down. I come back to the jail 2 months later, and they're still locked down. They locked down the jail for 6 months over this shit we had going on. These 2 guys fought, this black and this white guy, and it turned into a riot, turning blacks on whites. They came in with the pepper ball guns and all that shit and locked us down for 6 months. I coincidentally run into my weed man, Eric, in this dorm. This dorm was cracking off. The other dorm, this is K-Pod, Supermax. There's Supermax, K-Pod, and there's Max, which is L-Pod. I bond out after 2 months. I wound up going back. My aunt came off my bond, and I wound up having to go back to jail for 6 months. And when I went back for 6 months, the other place was the terror dorm, just the same. 90% dorm, 90% people in these dorms are going to prison, 5% are going home, and I forgot the other 5%. Halfway house, whatever. 90% everyone in there is going to prison. Been to prison, talking guys that have the worst of the worst charges and crimes. Scary in there. I seen dudes fly off on each other. That's the place I said I saw a guy get poked with a pencil in the neck. It was bloody and gory. Blood was spewing out. These dorms are as violent and as ill as the streets and or prison. I saw dudes in there fighting on a whole nother level. Guys who were in there trying to make a name for themselves, getting ready for prison. There was a guy in there that I had met when I was in the misdemeanor dorm, and somehow he had got his whatever. There were guys in the misdemeanor dorm too that were going to prison now, but it was no less chaotic as K&L. This guy winds up going to so when they go to prison, before they go to prison, they go from the regular dorm to, so this guy went from the regular dorm to L Pod, and he was proving himself. And I seen this guy that I never would have, I thought I could have taken him. He was just a little bit bigger than me. I would have thought I would have handled him. He beat this guy up 2-3 times his size, made a bitch of this dude, split this dude's eye open. I never seen anybody's eye, like his eyelid was like completely busted open. It was fucking gnarly. It was blood all over the place. This guy's shirt, you could have drenched out blood. He just was profusely bleeding. He had a rag to it. There was nothing to stop it. They had to take him out of the dorm, and I guess he had to go get stitched up or something. Dude just went stupid on him. And like I said, I've seen probably 100 street fights. The few fights that I saw in both those dorms, Thunderdome, bloody, gnarly, disgusting. Dudes are on a whole nother level in those dorms compared to the misdemeanor and regular jails and dorms I've been in my life. Those dorms were as fucking dangerous as the hood or prison, if not worse. Guys are in there making a name for themselves. Guys are in there showing out, knowing that they're going to have to deal with this. So I actually seen people go from just acting normal to start showing their ass and picking fights with people, trying to get their practice in. I couldn't even keep up with all the fights that I saw between those two dorms alone. I think my phone's about to die. We're going to have to do part 2. Stay ADD.